Now that we have Twinmotion 2025 open, you'll see straight away from the get-go, we have a new work environment. On the right-hand side, things have changed ever so slightly, whilst on the left-hand side, it's pretty much identical to before. First thing I always like to do is simply get rid of our navigation bar because that's not required. However, once we look at our ambient settings, you'll see that we have two new settings down the bottom: Dynamic Sky and HDRI, which includes a number of environment presets that come with the download. So for instance, we have Sunrise Glow, Sunny Coast, Golden Hour, etc. You can also create your own personal presets, which makes rendering the perfect scene even easier. Just like before, you can also add your own HDRI sky. It will automatically load that in, which you can of course choose from the library section of HDR environments, or you can download and install your own. But because Twinmotion 2025 has some cool features in the Dynamics guide, we'll stay in this scenario. Moving through, of course, we'll see the biggest update in 2025 is through the Dynamics guide, and it is volumetric clouds. So if we continue to scroll further down, we'll see volumetric clouds as a setting. Now, at the moment, it's set to minimal, but if we slowly slide this slider up and down, we'll see more and more cloud cover. Of course, that also changes the presets. So if we then scroll back down and readjust our clouds, you'll see white puffy clouds come through in 2D. If we change to volumetric, they're genuinely 3D clouds. So for instance, if I would fly up to airplane level in Twinmotion, you'd see that all of these clouds are full 3D puffy geometric objects. So for whatever reason you wanted to create a cloud scene with a plane flying through, well, now you can. The volumetric clouds has a few additional settings, of course, like the height of the actual clouds themselves. So you could have really, really low cloud cover, or you could have extremely high clouds as well. You can change their appearance from scale to vertical extent, etc. You'd have to be pretty pedantic about your cloud formation and structure to be playing with this too long. Personally, I think I'll set it up once, I'll create it as a preset, and then I'll use that going forward. For instance, the puffiness of this cloud really doesn't matter to me. But for some people, their requirements might be this specific that they really want to fine tune the puffiness of the clouds and the density of the clouds to get that perfect look they're looking for. Basically, what's happening with Twinmotion 2025 is it's taking it from a basic rendering software into the more high-end versions. Now, as I say that, working on a Mac, unfortunately, there still is no path tracer option available. We do have Lumen, but we don't have path tracer. If we were to continue scrolling down in the ambient settings, there's a few additional extras in 2025. For example, fog is improved and enhanced. We can have significantly higher density in fog, all the way to 100%, really moody scenes, really wintry scenarios. We can drop that to 0, or we can really blow it out completely so we can't see anything. So with the fog setting, we have a lot more control to create some really interesting scenes. If we drop an animated human in for no other reason but to experiment with the fog, you see our dear friend Amir here can completely disappear with this fog and you can barely see the man, or you can make him extremely visible. These fog settings can further be manipulated a little bit higher up in our sky settings. So if we play with these two sliders, you can see the light occlusion slowly changes and the atmosphere density becomes significantly worse. So if you do have polluted airways in your rendering scene, this might add to what you're trying to achieve. A few minor additions into Twinmotion 2025, just to run through them quickly. Inside lights, you'll see our projector light, which if we were to go to a nighttime scene, we would see our projector come on. At the moment, it has no signal, but of course we could add a movie, a video, anything onto this projector. So if we rotate this 180 degrees so it's visible from all of us on this screen, we can simply go ahead and add in a video. And there we go. Now you can watch one of my own tutorials inside your Twinmotion render without having to manipulate that in post-production. It is super easy to use and it is an awesome little feature. Now, one of my biggest personal gripes about Twinmotion was their measure tool, and thankfully they've listened to one of my previous videos. Now, if you come into measure tool and you go to measure tool 2, you can actually start measuring inside Twinmotion. So if I go from point to point, I know that's approximately 4 meters. Whereas previously you had this ridiculous tool that kind of just automatically ran a laser between 2 points, which wasn't really helpful for most of the things that I did. Now we can put our dear friend Amir back in, and we still can't actually approximate how tall the man is until we turn him on his side. So let's put him into a laying position and simply measure how tall our dear friend Amir is. And there we go. Now if we move Amir, we'll see he's approximately 1.85 meters, give or take, which is exactly what we would be looking for. Another little addition inside objects and particles is confetti. Now, there's a lot of confetti options. We can drop a spring confetti cannon in and it'll just blow a ton of confetti. Why you'd want a confetti cannon like this or like this, God knows, but I'm guessing there is obviously some requirements for confetti in Twinmotion. Otherwise, they wouldn't have added it. For me personally, I never see the use of it. I'll never use it, but hey, maybe you guys will. Now, if we were to add a lone tree into our scene, Twinmotion 2025 has improved the shadows. Unfortunately, what you'll notice is even in our render settings on Lumen, because we're on a Mac and we don't have Path Tracer, we can scroll down to our shadow settings and we won't find the new update. There's meant to be a secondary toggle here that says accurate and ambient, which allows us to adjust these shadows. So unfortunately, that is a feature that has not come to Mac. Something that's been missing for a very long time on all Mac and Windows Twinmotion versions is the ability to adjust multiple settings on multiple images at once. So if I go ahead and create two images side by side, go and adjust the time of day, for example, in this image, previously what I would have to do is click on the three dots, copy ambient, and paste ambience. Now I can hold Shift or Command and select multiple images at once and adjust the time of day simultaneously, or change a preset, for example, and all of them will be updated automatically. This is going to make creating images so much quicker and so much easier. If I were to quickly create my first sequence, which is a very simple camera adjustment moving from one to the other, there's a few new features added to video as well. So first of all, let's go back to the start. Let's open up our pop-up so we can see our camera path, which is literally from one spot to the other. We can change how our camera eases in and out. So now if I change the camera easing, so if we test the easing in and out, you'll see it slowly starts, ramps up, and then wraps around. If we would change to a linear format, it would be a very consistent movement throughout, like we're very much used to in the video format. We can also go ahead and manipulate this camera angle in a little bit more detail. So for example, if we were to pick an object to track, let's say this object in the middle, we can then press play once again, and it will make sure our focus is continuously on that object. Now, that is going to be extremely helpful when you have a house model and you want to do an orbit, which brings me to my next point. If we select the three dots next to our new camera scene, we can add an orbit cam. So we'd have to manipulate a few of our settings on our orbit cam, making sure it's a little bit better aligned now. And then if we hit play, we'll see it automatically orbits at whatever angle, whatever roll we set. So once again, an extremely helpful addition to our video editing toolkit in architecture, especially because we're going to be able to create really awesome camera effects wrapping around houses, orbiting scenes, almost as if we're using an FPV drone or something similar. In Twinmotion 2024, we had the burden of importing objects and having literally no way to adjust or edit them. Now, as Twinmotion progresses, in 2025, we have this new modeling tab, which basically allows us to edit faces and objects. If we start to edit faces, we can select single by ID, connected groups, or all. So for example, let's select a single face. Let's pick that one. We can simply delete it if we don't like the face, or we can also edit our normals. So by selecting that couch, for example, we can auto fix the couch. These modeling features really don't have too much value for most of what we do on a day-to-day basis in Twinmotion. However, what has immense value is if we come across to our objects on the right-hand side, allow the modeling to process for a second, and then we can select mirror. Now, we can take this couch, for example, and mirror it to the left, to the right, back, front, top, however we want, which was near impossible previously in Twinmotion, whereas now it's a simple click of a button. For a couch like this, it makes absolutely no sense, so we can go ahead and simply delete it. However, when you have an L-shaped sofa like this and you go to mirror the object, that is of immense value to us because that was previously not possible. You would have had to go out and find the original object or an alternative that works in your space. Anyway, that's all from me, team. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you smash that subscribe button down below. And like always, I will see you next week.